It's one of the first warm days of spring. Decided to do a quick walk around the lake where I spend quite a lot of time myself, either doing a bit of fishing for myself or obviously guiding others. This being the main carp lake, Angler's Paradise. This is one of the residents only lakes, so this is for people who are obviously visiting on a holiday and staying on site. And it's very much the jewel in the crown of the estate. 4.5 acre lake, really good head of fish. At least a couple of hundred fish in here, between say 15 pounds and maybe 32, 33, depending on the time of year. There's sort of 2 or 3 30s in here. Great lake to come and spend a night or two. Really good chance of your first 20, and they're lovely old fish, traditional Angler's Paradise strain, long scaly ones, really nice fish. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick walk around, show you some of the spots, how I approach it, and hopefully that'll set you up for any trips that you might do here yourself this year. So we started off at the 5 Seas hut. 5 Seas is a syndicate that also have some limited access to the fishery, so they would be able to fish it on a Saturday from May until September, which is the only day of the week that people staying on site wouldn't be fishing the lake. Like I say, the rest of the time it's just for the residents. And in fact, I don't know if you're going to be able to pick it out without a filter, but there's a fish, looks like a 20 pounder, just milling along the back of those reeds there. So anyway, let's go around the lake and have a look at some of the swims and how to approach them. So first swim, steps, really good swim, particularly early and later in the year, because it gives you good access to shallow water to the right hand side and deeper water down to your left. In the summer there's usually quite a lot of lilies out in front of here, so if you do fish to gaps in the pads, do make sure that obviously you're set up to fish safely, so that your lead can drop, and gear that can obviously deal with big fish. One thing about this swim as well, the fish very often get right along the margin in front of you here, so don't be afraid to drop a bait right off the rod tip. Between this swim and the next one there's an inlet pipe. Particularly at this time of year, fish very often congregate in shallow spots like this where you've got fresh water coming in and then obviously a reed bed over shallow water, so a classic spot particularly in the earlier part of the year. Now we're going to come down to a swim where I've spent quite a lot of time over the years. This is the Little Point, and you can see a lot of the swims here really well maintained. Ashley, who's the estate manager here, really looks after it with a team, so you can put your bivvy on there without it kind of getting muddy and stuff like that. Now what we've got, so round to our right here we've got a little back bay, which is a great stalking spot. Obviously it is the earlier part of the year now, so once the lily pads are up and there's a bit more colour on the trees, of course it will look a lot better. But to your right here, really good spot for stalking. Keep the floating baits going in there during the day and you might be able to make a chance. Over towards the far side here, where you've got an island in front of you, that second island over, you'll see there's a rope that's going across there, which marks the no fishing sort of safety area for the fish. Fishing over to the rope itself is very productive, and certainly my favourite way of fishing this swim. Again, don't ignore the margins though, because the fish will come right in round and you can catch right off the tip. Now there's plenty of other species in this particular lake as well, so those of you that really want to tackle a monster, there's a handful of catfish in here. The biggest one last year, biggest one in 2020, was 93 pounds, and from memory I think all of the cats in here are over 50 pounds now, so really good chance of an absolute monster. So we'll just go round towards the back bay. Now this is an area, particularly warm days like this, that the fish really get into, and in summer this will be covered in pads, so you can see the weeds just starting to come up there. Again, don't know if you can make it out, but between the island and the bank there's a good fish. Again, looks like a decent 20 pounder, just cruising about. Another one behind it as well, looks ripe for a floater to me today, and a fish bubbling out in open water in the bay. So like the little dugout swim that we just walked past there, it's one of those swims that really doesn't get that much attention, but if you ever come down to the lake and find there's a few people on, don't ignore these little bays and channels. The fish get used to being fished for regularly here. People forget that each week there's new people here fishing. You know, like any fishery, there is regular pressure on it, so don't be afraid to sometimes try away from the main swims, because certainly any kind of pressure moves the fish out of the busier areas. Just along the high bank here, it's not a swim in itself, but you can just see there's a pipe that comes in. You might even just be able to hear that just at my feet here. You'll see the significance of that when we move round to the next swim. So as I was saying, there's cats to over £90, golden tench to £6.5, £7, gold north to a similar weight. So here's the opposite little dugout swim to the one that we were just looking at. Now, as you can see down the left hand side here, there's some really tempting features. You've got that overhanging tree. As you already know, you've got the pipe coming in behind it, which is an obvious feature in itself. So fishing from here down towards that channel, don't go too far behind the tree there, because obviously you need to make sure that you've got a good chance of getting them back should you hook one. But yeah, really good spot. And again, if the main lake's busy, these little nooks and crannies often produce a fish or two. So just moving round now, round towards the boathouse. Final swim before the boathouse. Another one that's really overlooked, because when you first look at it, it doesn't look like it's got a lot of water in front of it. But on warm days, as it starts to warm up, as we come to this time of day, it's mid to late morning now, the fish will come out of the main lake and come up into these bays. So it's really well worth setting a couple little traps in here, or sitting here and waiting and putting some floaters out. Really, really good area, especially if you're just doing the days. Another good little spot, if you just walk to the side of this swim, see there's a well-trodden little path here. You can see some daffodils on that island there with some branches over the top. I've had a lot of fish on a little hard patch under there, really good spot. Just put one rod under there on bank sticks. Make sure obviously that you're fishing with the bait runner quite tight, so that it can't take too much line when you're fishing up into the channels. And like I say, you've got fish to 90 odd pounds in here, so make sure that your gear's up to the task. Now, over the years in the main lake, the fish have spawned really, really well, so the staff here work really hard to get all of the small fish out every couple of years. However, when the lake is going through that cycle and there's a lot of smaller carp that have bred on in the lake, it can pay to make sure you've got big hook baits. So always make sure you've got some big plastic hook baits, or big pellets, or very hard boilies. So now we're moving into the no fishing area. So this is Ziggs Boathouse. This is where Ziggs do occasionally wets the line in here. Lovely old boathouse, and it's an area of safety for the fish, especially you know, when the lake's busy and all the rest of it. The catfish absolutely love it in there with all that structure as well. So like I said, if you are fishing to the rope, say from Little Point, do be aware that even when you're fishing for the carp, you've got a chance of one of these monstrous catfish picking the bait up as well. Alright, onwards and upwards to another one of my favourite swims as we come out of the no fishing area. Now, this particular swim is probably the furthest walk from the accommodation on the whole complex, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because it's such a good swim, you can't overlook it. As you can see, it's recently been reprofiled. It's looking really, really good now. It's another little dugout swim. You can get your bivvy down there so that you're right on top of your rods for making sure you get to them straight away. Now, you're going to have to picture this. In the summer, you've got lily pads pretty much coming from one side to the other about halfway across. Now, it's a very clear line where the lily pads stop, and that's because at that point the water becomes deeper, where you've got the old riverbed from before this was a lake running diagonally all the way across. If you fish up tight to that lily line in the summer, it is absolutely deadly. It's definitely one of the best spots on the lake. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you've got lots of little marginal features here, and again, really, really make sure that you don't overlook those. Bait wise, any decent boilies work. I've fished here myself quite recently and fished it quite a bit over the years. Any good bait will work. Just bear in mind, like I say, that there will be some little carp in here at the moment, so do make sure that you use the bigger sizes. A couple of 20 millers or something is absolutely perfect to make sure that you've got a hook bait that will present. When there are little fish in here as well, you do want to think about your rig and make sure you use something that will reset if the little ones have been pecking at it. Ashley, who's the estate manager here, he gave me a really good tip the other day that he's been doing really well using a hinge stiff link, because the small fish can't peck away at it like they can with a bottom bait. So that's been really effective for him on here. This is a swim called Rats. Don't know why, I've never seen a rat in here in 12-13 years of fishing here. Little hard patch off the side of the island here that's very productive underneath those bushes. Great spot for the catfish as well. And if you've got no one to your right, obviously it gives you access down towards the dam end of the lake and the deeper water. There is a little swim in the middle here, does do fish, but really if you do get people into your left and right here, you might feel a little bit hemmed in. So I would either prefer generally, if I was at this end of the lake, to go into Rats or this swim, which is very unoriginally called the Ivy Post. Particularly at night with the deeper water in front of you, with this being the dam end of the lake, it is one of the best swims on the lake. Big mistake that people make in here is that they overcast. You've got a little gravelly hump maybe 3 rod lengths out in front of you, and plenty of deep water down your right hand side, dropping down to maybe 9 or 10 feet. So particularly at night, or when a warm wind's blowing down this way, really good area. And again, does produce some of the cats as well, and at least with there not being too many islands in this area, if you do come across a cat on your carp gear, you've got a decent chance of getting it out. Just spinning around behind me as well, haven't mentioned, relatively new addition to the complex. The whole site now has a very secure otter fence as well to protect these fish. This is the dam wall swim. So you can pop your rods there, a little area behind, set up your shelter or whatever. Again, deep water swim. You've got the monk, which is the outlet, which is always the deepest part on any lake, wherever the monk is sighted. So that's always a good clue when you go on a new lake for the first time. And out in front of you, coming diagonally down the lake, you've got that old riverbed, which is a really good area to target. So when you come into this swim or any of these other deeper water swims, make sure that you have a little lead around first and find the areas. You know, any little features can really pay off. Okay, so we come across this little bridge on the dam wall where the water leaves, if the water level comes up at all. And there's a big swim here, little one next to it, maybe ideal for 2 anglers that want to fish close together. Again, if there's no one down to your left hand side, it allows you to access that deeper water. Plus you've got overhanging tree on the end of the island there. Hot days like this, the fish will just be cruising around that end, so fishing up tight to the island can be really productive. Also, from this swim here, you've got this channel, as you can see there, which joins into a back bay, which we'll go and have a look at in a minute. Again, really good spot. You can pop a hook bait over there against the island, punch it in there nice and low, because there are some overhanging branches there, as you can see higher up. Punch it in there nice and low, make sure you're sat on your rods, and you'll be picking those fish off, ambushing them as they move between the deeper water and the shallower water. Now, I've probably already mentioned, but one of the biggest mistakes that people make on this lake is to ignore the little bays, the nooks and crannies where the fish spend a hell of a lot of their time away from angling pressure. We're about to move into probably what is my favourite area of the lake. A lot of the fishing that I do on here myself, it might just be me grabbing a couple hours between guiding sessions, or I might have a few hours on any given day to try and catch someone a good fish. So these areas really play into my hands because I know the fish spend a lot of time in here. A lovely little bay in here. So that's the little spot that I was saying about casting to from the previous swim. As you can see, we've got a little swim at the bottom of the bank here. If you do fish in here, stay nice and quiet, set yourself back a little bit at the bottom here. Don't have your rods hanging out over the water. The fish do know what's going on. Like I say, people forget Anglers Paradise is a really productive venue. You know, there's lots of fish in here to fish for, but equally they do get fished for a bit. So, you know, think about your approach. And just fishing really close in, almost off your rod tip here, or just in this gap where the bay comes round there. Really productive. And in fact, very recently I was down here with Xenia, and she had a 24 pounder just down there, which took literally a couple of yards from the bank. Really exciting fishing, really sort of up close and personal stuff, which is the type of fishing that personally I prefer far more than just sitting fishing on the bottom. But this lake does lend itself to both. Well, we've almost made a full lap. Just going to drop into the final couple of swims that we haven't covered. You can see that bay comes all around here. So we've got the Pagoda Swim. Now, pagodas at Anglers Paradise always have priority for disabled anglers. So obviously it's okay to fish there, but if a disabled angler does need access to it with the paths that lead down to them all, it is really important that obviously you allow them to do so, and that you're aware of that, obviously, if you do choose to fish from those swims. Final swim on the lake, and a very commanding swim. Nebs Point. Nebs Point, as you can see, gives really good coverage of a lot of the areas that we've talked about on the walk around. You've got the shallower water up to the right hand side here, which will soon be covered in pads and be holding fish. Again, I don't know if we're going to be able to see without a filter on this, because I'm just doing this with a smartphone. There's 5 or 6 fish just sat up over that emerging weed at the moment, that shallow water. So on those sunny days, well worth a look. Out in front of you, you've got the island. Great feature, but where a lot of people go wrong with this particular spot is they want to cast right against that island. Against the island itself is really shallow. However, if you come back a rod length or two, you're dropping down into the riverbed, and for carp and for cats, that's far more productive. The Five Seas Island, it's well worth putting a rod. There's a hard patch just as it comes in round the end there. Well worth having a go there. Really good spot that's caught me lots of fish over the years. As we come back round by the pagoda, there's a really good number of fish out in front of me here today. I can see maybe a couple of dozen at the moment just milling around in the bay here. Like I say, looking absolutely bang on for a little bit of floater fishing today. Looks absolutely perfect for it. Yeah, there's at least a couple of dozen there. Very tempting. So like I say, very much the jewel in the crown of the estate. Some absolutely brilliant fish in here. Great whether you're looking to catch your first 20 pounder or want to try for a big catfish. Lots and lots of opportunity, and one where I've really enjoyed my time over the years. As you can see, as we come back round to the Five Seas hut where we started, I've got my gear here. Having seen those few milling around on the top, it's very tempting for me, so I'm going to head off right now. Hope this has been of some use to people that visit in the future. I'm going to see if I can go and bag one off the top.